I wanted to talk about the 360 generation. Actually, when I say that, I don't just mean Xbox 360, I mean 360, PS3, and the Wii. Somehow, over the last 3 or 4 months, I've found myself returning to a lot of games from that generation. Just yesterday, I finished Devil May Cry 4. At the start of the year, I found myself playing the first 2 Arkham games. I dabbled in some Mirror's Edge. I replayed Splinter Cell Blacklist, had an amazing time returning to Max Payne 3, and also got stuck into some other games like the SSX reboot and Fight Night Champion. And I've been having the best time. Now look, if you've been following my videos and my previous channel, then you probably know me as someone who champions the PS2, original Xbox, GameCube, that whole generation. And while I do have a tremendous amount of love and, it would be safe to say I have a borderline obsession with that generation. I find myself, I don't know if nostalgia is just kicking in now and I'm starting to remember that generation more fondly, but what I can say is that someone who has played or plays a lot of games from the PS2, Xbox era and a lot of games from the PS3, Xbox 360 era, there's a big difference that I notice, and the big difference for me is that I kind of feel like the games from the 360 generation age better than the generation previous. Like, we all hold up the PS2, and in some ways rightly so, as the best console ever. Or, well, I don't want to say all of us do. It's a general, it's the best selling console of all time. It has a ridiculously good library. There are a stupid amount of games that launched huge franchises that are still going today. That all came from the PS2. I even made a video myself like a year and a half ago about the best year in gaming history, in which I concluded was 2001 because of games like Final Fantasy X and Halo and GTA 3, SSX Tricky, like all of the stuff that came out around that time. Max Payne, let's not forget Max Payne. And so I and many other people have held up the PS2 over the years as the gold standard, the ultimate console. And so this video serves as a bit of a sanity check in a lot of ways, because now I'm starting to wonder, does the 360 give the PS2 a good run for its money? And just a minute ago I said that I felt like the 360 era ages better than the one before it. And the games that I've revisited over the last 3 or 4 months, I feel I've had as good of a time as I have, because it seems like from kind of 2006 onwards, developers just kind of locked into certain mechanics and certain ways of, like, Modern Warfare drops in 2007, and from 2007 onwards, every shooter is L trigger to aim and R trigger to shoot. They all play like that now. They're all immediately familiar. Before that, first-person shooters in the generation previous, on the, the PS2, the Xbox, everybody's control schemes were all over the place. Some shooters were click the stick to zoom in. Some shooters didn't even have zoom in at all. Some shooters were using R1 and L1 to change weapon. Nowadays, like, R1 is throw a grenade. We all know... Like, let's not mess about here. R1 is to throw a grenade. But that wasn't the case back then. So when you return to games from that generation, it takes you a minute to sort of adjust. Third-person shooters are exactly the same. Third-person shooters are even worse. They're all over, and they're not bad games, by the way. There's a lot of third-person shooters from the PS2 generation that I absolutely love. But control schemes and just kind of the way things feel and the way things play are all over the place. And then you hit 2006, Gears of War drops, and then every single third-person shooter forward is it has a cover system. Cover systems are just like a mandatory thing in third-person shooters now, for the most part. And we went through a real phase in that 360 generation where everybody was, attaching to cover. And so from that point forward, a lot of third-person shooters feel immediately familiar. Like, whether you're playing Dark Void from like 2008 or playing The Division 2, you know what the deal is. And so because we have stuck with this format and this structure with a lot of games, we kind of settled on how things should work in those 360 PS3 days, and we haven't really diverted from that since, or we haven't really innovated on that. Like, you can go back and play a game from the PS3 and the 360 generation and just immediately jump in. There's no like, what's the button to, you just know. You just play those games. And on top of that, when I say does the 360 give the PS2 a run for its money, like, I could be speaking from a biased place, or a biased position. The 360 generation was the generation that cranked out the most amount of games that I wanted to see. And when I say that, I mean cool action, 10 to 20 hour experiences, high production values, preferably in HD. You know, that's my pocket, I suppose. that's kind of where I live and exist. You give me a like I said, a 10 to 20 hour action focused experience, like a third person or first person shooter, or a hack and slash. Like give me all the Devil May Cries and Resident Evils and Dead Spaces and like all of it. I want all of it. Give me Vanquish just again and again and again. Things that I could finish within like a week, but also replay multiple times with like a new game plus on a harder difficulty. That's my groove right there. And so as I've been dabbling more and more in this generation and returning to the games from it, it's like I've just been hit with this wave of curiosity all over again. And like I said before, it could be just nostalgia kicking in because we're nearly 20 years on from this point now. But I can't go 24 hours without thinking, oh, I should really play Singularity again. Where's my copy of Shadows of the Damned? Should I give Blue Dragon a try? I'd never tried that game. Should I give Blue Dragon? Oh, I want to play Prey, the original Prey, not the Xbox One Prey. Like, hold on a minute. I need to install Spec Ops: The Line. Where's Infamous? Do I have a copy of Enslaved? Like I sat here this morning thinking, oh yeah, I should really replay the Resistance trilogy again. Like those games were great. And to be honest, I don't even know it. Like I played those games at the time. I think I had a good time. I remember having a good time with them as they were coming out. I got the PS3 fairly early after its launch, and I played those games as they were releasing, and they were all fine and dandy to me at the time. They may have aged poorly, but based on my experiences so far returning to that generation, things hold up really well. There's kind of a simplicity to some of the games from that generation. It's like we hadn't got too complicated and too bloated by that point. Everybody wasn't making a game that was like 30, 40, 50, 60 hours long. They were like, let's just put out the maddest thing we possibly can, and if people can finish it in 12 hours, who cares? Gears of War is, you can finish that game in like 4 or 5 hours easy, no trouble. But we didn't really complain about that at the time. At least I didn't complain about it. There may have been, certain corners of certain forums that were complaining about it, but it wasn't really an issue for me. But I have this sudden urge to play all these games again. I don't have the time to do this, but, I go to bed at night thinking, yeah, why not? Why don't we load up Amped 3? Let me play that Fear trilogy again. I even got, how bad this has gotten? It's gotten so bad that I even considered trying out Too Human the other day, even though I know it's like part 1 of a fully cancelled trilogy. The game was like panned across the board. I have never met a single person or spoken to a single person who had a decent thing to say about it, and I know it's supposed to be repetitive and kind of boring. But, there's a part of the back of my brain that goes, yeah, let's find out for ourselves. Like, the library from that generation is just ridiculous. And in part, that's because it went on as long as it did. It was one of the longest console generations that we've gone through. You're looking at 8 years between the 360 and the Xbox One, whereas previous generations were in that 5-year range. Because I'm not even talking about the big hitters like your Halo 3 and your Uncharted's and Last of Us, God of War 3. I'm not talking about GTA and Red Dead, although those are all fantastic games that, again, still hold up very well. But there's a B tier. There's a level underneath all of those. Like, not quite the biggest budget, but not indie either, where I suddenly have this urge to play Kingdoms of Amalur again, or Heavenly Sword. Like, the list just goes on and on and on and on. Whereas the PS2, or the generation before it, again, a lot of incredible games. But what I will say, in fact, I think I've figured out a way to explain what I'm trying to say here. Essentially, the B-tier games from the 360 generation are better than the B-tier games from the PS2 generation. So I suppose it's really a question of what do you value more? It's a quantity versus quality sort of debate in many ways. Because the PS2 generation for me is like there's a load of 10s and 9s, and then there's a load of 7s that I have fond memories of because I played them during formative years that I can overlook their flaws. Stuff like Red Faction and The Bouncer and Cold Fear, like they're not amazing. They are in that sort of like that 7 to you're touching an 8 out of 10 range in my opinion. They're not great. They're playable, perfectly fine, but I played them when I was like 10 and 11 years old, and so so my memory of them elevates their status a bit. Whereas when I got to the 360 generation, but my taste by that point had been refined. But I don't know. Like I said, a bit of a sanity check. I wanted to throw it out there. I suppose the gist of this video is me saying binary domain is kind of cool. The Darkness is kind of cool. Enchanted Arms is kind of cool. Rainbow Six Vegas is kind of cool. Like, just give me... I would pay an obscene amount of money for the 360... Like, every 360 game, if you give me that in, like, 4K, 60 FPS, good, like, just take my bank account. But yeah, we had it. Boy, did we had it in the palm of our hands. And for some reason along the way, we decided to stray away from God's plan. But that's it from me. Let me know what you think. I'll see you on the next one.